It was night time. The wind was blowing rather strongly at the base of Mount Horn. In a small, rarely traveled by part of the mountain was a bunch of rocks that looked a little out of place. The reason is that those rocks had fallen from the top of the mountain, closing the entrance of a cave inside. A cave that had no exit. Inside the cave was only darkness, except for one source of light, a faint flame that was coming from the tail of a Charizard. It was rolled up, holding an adult man protectively close to its belly. The man had only one arm. His other arm and both of his legs were missing. He was asleep, but the Charizard was awake. It stared at the man with worry and sadness in its eyes, almost as if it was afraid of something. Eventually, what the Charizard feared happened. Its stomach rumbled, making a loud noise throughout the cave. It flinched, and closing its eyes, the man woke up and yawned weakly. Ruby, he called out to his Pokemon. The Charizard replied reluctantly. Are you hungry, girl? The man asked as he brought his only arm up and stroked the Charizard's head gently. Ruby flinched again quickly and shook her head, denying her hunger. However, her stomach betrayed her by rumbling loudly once more. The man simply smiled. Come on, you don't have to lie. I already told you. You must tell me if you're hungry. Ruby kept shaking her head, trying to say that she was not hungry. Don't worry, it's all right, the man said, trying to comfort her, petting her head. Ruby hugged her trainer. Her eyes became watery. Ruby, if you don't eat, you'll starve, the man whispered. Ruby only seemed to be more unsettled. She began crying a little. Please don't cry. You have to eat, he said, sighing a little. He stroked her head again. I won't be able to pet you anymore, but I can still show you affection another way, he said, reaching up and kissing the Charizard's forehead. Now, please, you have to eat. The man shuffled a little so that he was standing up with what was left of his body. He extended his arm and placed it right in front of Ruby, who only stared at it with sadness in tear-filled eyes. Please, Ruby, I promise it won't hurt me, he said, smiling. He had already gone through this 3 times, so this one wasn't going to be any different. Ruby cried out, shaking her head. The man simply moved his arm closer to her. You must eat. And with that, Ruby gave up. She closed her eyes and silently cried as she opened her mouth. The man placed his arm between her large fangs. Go on. Trying to make it as fast as she could, Ruby closed her mouth and in a swift motion bit off a part of the man's arm completely. The man winced and tried to maintain himself in place. Tears kept flowing down Ruby's face as she chewed her trainer's arm off. The only food she had in that cave. Gah! Good girl, he said, smiling despite the pain. Once Ruby was finished eating, she quickly snuggled closer to her trainer and hugged what was left of him, which was now only his body and his head. He was breathing hard, but he was still smiling all the way. Are you full now? He asked simply. Ruby hugged him tighter and nodded, weeping. Good, he said, looking at her saddened face. Ruby, he began, looking into her eyes. Ruby, I promise, we'll... The man stopped there and didn't say anything for a few seconds before correcting himself. I promise you'll make it out here alive. Ruby cried. She knew what he meant by that. She cried and cried, hugging her trainer tightly. Long after the man had gone back to sleep to conserve what little energy he still had, Ruby kept crying. She cried harder than she ever had before. She cried because she knew what would happen the next time she got hungry.